Hey folks, today we'll learn how to make a ToDo application in ReactJS. So without any delay, let's get started. So before getting started, I'll explain to you the basic structure that I'm gonna make. I'll have a input field where the user can input the task he wants to add to the to-do list, and besides that input field, I'll have an add button. So when a user enters the task in the input field and clicks on the add button, whatever the task is there in the input field will be added to the to-do list. Okay, and the to-do list will be displayed below the input field. This will be the basic structure, although we'll have a few more features like the feature to strike through, feature to delete a task or clear all tasks, etc. But I just explain you the basic structure of the app. So let's make it. So as I told you, first we'll have an input field. So let's make that. Then we'll have a button which will simply say add. That's it, and nothing more, which will say add. So this will be the basic structure. We'll add some styling later, like that is of no worries. You are here to understand React, not CSS. So yeah, but still we'll add some styling later. So yeah, what I want is user can uh, enter a task here, whatever he wants to enter, and then he will click on add, this add button, and the task will be added to here below this input field in a list of tasks. Okay, below the task will be added below the list of tasks, not at the top but below. Okay, so this is what I want. So let's get started. So okay, so I made the input field, I made the button. Now I need state. Why I need the state? Why I thought that I need the state, I'll tell you, just a sec. So what I was thinking is, whenever user types something, some text in the input field, and he clicks on the add, just before the user clicks on the add, whatever is there, whatever text is there in the input field, I want to capture that text. Why? Because that text will be the task. Okay, let me reiterate. Just before the user clicks on this add button, whatever the text is here in the input field will be the task. So I want to capture that text. That is why I am using the use state here. So to keep the thing simple, I'll say input and set input, so that there will be no confusion what it is, and used it. And let's take the initial value of input as an empty string. Now what I want is, I want on change, do something on change. And what should be done on change? Just set the value of this input, to what? To e dot target dot value. But where the heck is e? So let's take e from here. Okay, so what this e, so why there is red color here? It is saying set input is not defined. Okay, so I have set input. Okay, set input. So yeah, so what it will give us, it will give e dot target dot value will give us the text that the user is typing here in this input field. Okay, so yeah, we have, now we'll also have this value to make it a control component, and this value will be equal to input. Why I have this? Because initially the input will be this string, so empty string, so input will be empty, and when it will change, it will also change. So yeah, it will be kind of controlled in like both directions, no? So that is why I have this, and you will understand more about this when I proceed further. Okay, so now let's focus on this button. When I click on this button, what should happen? When I click on this button, I want to capture whatever is being typed in the input field by the user. Why I want to capture that? Because I want to add that thing in my to-do list. That is why I want to capture that. So where is that thing? That thing is already being captured in this state variable input. Okay, so let's do that. What we'll do is, okay, let's take another state. Why I'm taking another state is, so input set input, let's say list. This will be the list of tasks. That list is equals to useState, and let's have it as empty array. Let me just do this. So what I am thinking of is, this will be the list of tasks, and by using set list we'll add another task, or will can also edit a particular task by using set list. No, okay, so what I want is, I want to add another task when the user clicks on add. Let me reiterate, I want to add another task in the list of to-dos when the user clicks on the add button. Okay, so let's do that. So I'll say on click, and on click, what you will do on click, you'll say, let's say set task and add another task. In order to add another task, I want the new task to be added below the already present tasks. Let me reiterate, I want the new task to be added below already present tasks. So for that to happen, first I have to destructure the already present tasks, and at the end I want to add new tasks. So here I destructure the already present tasks. So it's not set task, sorry, it's actually set list. And here I destructure already present tasks by doing dot list. And now I have to add new task. A task will contain two things. One, it will have an ID, and second, it will have the text, the input. Okay, the text, the actual task that the user wants to complete. It will have these two things. Now in order to get ID, if it's a real app, this ID thing will be provided by the backend guys. But here for ID, I have downloaded a package before as UUID. From this UUID package, let me just show you what this is. Okay, so it is this package. You can, if you are building this app in VS Code or any editor, you can install this package using npm iuuid, and then can write just this line to import ID. This actually gives us the IDs, so you don't have to write your own. So as I told you, the list of tasks will contain the actual tasks, and each task will be an object. Let me reiterate, the list of tasks will contain obviously the tasks, and each task is an object which will contain two things. The object will contain two things. One is ID, and the second is the task itself. Okay, so we'll say ID is equals to UUID, and I'll name the task ToDo. Okay, and this ToDo itself, and ToDo will be equal to the input. Now you might get I think you understand why this will be equal with the input. This input is the last input which was present here before the user clicked on the add button. So the input is not this input or this input or this input. The input here that we are using is this input, because after this user doesn't input anything else, he just clicked on the add button. So this input will be added to will be part of the new task. So this is the new task. This whole will be a new task. Okay, so actually this UUID, no, so this will give you new ID every time for every task. So why we need this? Because there are a few reasons. The one reason I'll tell you right now, because we have to map over the to-do list, and when we map over things, we have to give a key which should be different for every item. Okay, so here the key will be this ID. Although it doesn't hamper your app, it just gives an error in console. That's it. Since you're learning, if you don't want to have that, you can just avoid it. Okay, so we done this. Does this now? What I just told you, what we'll have here, we'll have a list of tasks. No, so the list of tasks is in this list, this state variable list. This state variable list contains the list of tasks. So let's just map over it. Since it's an array, we can map over it. So we'll say list dot map, and I'll say item. Each task I'll say and is an item. So here I'll just use a div. I'll just use a div and simply say just give me item dot to do. So item will give me this single item every time, and item dot to do will give me this input, the item the actual task. So let's see if this thing is working. So yeah, this is working. Now you see one anomaly here. This task is not cleared out. The previous task is not cleared out when I click on this add button. See, this is added, but this is not cleared out. I have to clear it manually. So let's have the functionality to clear out the task. So whenever the user clicks on the add button, I want the task to clear out. So when the user clicks on the add button, do two things. One, update the list of tasks, and the second thing is update the input. So we'll update the input by using this state function set input. So we'll update the input to this value. Oh, why the heck I am getting error here? So yeah, okay. So yeah, now let me just show you. Now if I add something, see, the thing will be added and will be removed from here, because the value will be set input. After the task has been added, after the new task has been added, the input will be set to the empty string. That is why we see nothing here. Yeah, so that's done. Now what I'm thinking of is, this is like the very basic thing that we made, that I told you about beforehand, before starting this video. Now what I'm thinking of is, first of all, this laptop needs charging. So just give me a minute. So yeah, I am back. Okay. So yeah, we are able to add task here. Now what I'm thinking is, I'm thinking of having a checkbox here, so that when a task is done, I can click on that checkbox, or the user can click on that checkbox and strike that task. Like a line can strike through that task, no? So yeah, so let's have a checkbox here. So let's have a checkbox here. Checkbox is also the of type input. So I'll have input and have its type as checkbox. Okay, so let me just close it. Okay, now what I'm thinking is, when a task is done and user clicks on this checkbox, that a line should come through that task. The task should strike through. Okay, so that is what I want. So let's implement it functionality. Now in order to do that, I told you that each task will have two things. One is ID, and second the task itself, the to do task, the user, that uh, the thing that user has entered, no? But the task will have three things. The third one is let's say is done. Is task done or not? Initially the task is not done, so its value will be false. Okay, so let me reiterate. A task will not have two things, it will have three things now. So whenever I add a new task here, in our list an object will be added, and that object will contain three keys. One is an ID of the task, second is the task itself, and third is the status of the task, whether task is done or not. So should I call it is done or status? Let me call it is done. Okay, so yeah, so it will be like more clear. Now what I will do is there is an attribute in this checkbox input type. It's a checked. If by default its value is true, you can see its value is true, hence all of these are checked. And if its value is false, this will be, let's say its value is false, then you won't be able to check these. Okay, so I want this its value to be dependent on is done. If a task is done, only then it should be checked, else. So it says is done is not defined. Why is it so? Because I should do item dot is done. Okay, so what will happen if a task is not done, that is status is false, that is its status is false, it will not be checked, never be checked. And when a task is done, it will always be checked. Okay, so this function, so this is done, but I also have to implement this strike through functionality. So let's do that. And since we have this item, let's just have a label here, and I'll have my task inside this. I'll tell you why I had this label, although if I didn't have this label, things were still working, but I'll tell you. And also have an ID, and I'll tell you why I'm having the ID. ID will be equal to item dot ID, and here I'll say, what was it, label, what attribute it has, label. So actually what actually happens is, no, let me just find that attribute, man. Label attribute HTML. Nah, label attribute checkbox. I just forgot that attribute. What was it? Okay, for. So what actually happens is, okay, so I have to equate it to item.id. Okay, now it's good. So what actually happens is, in general, what will happen if I don't have this label? Instead, if I have div or nothing for that matter, just this task, it will work. But what will happen when I click on this? This will, although this will be strike through, but when I click on the task itself, the line will not be strike through. So what it does is, this label, what it does is, this associates this thing with this thing. So it understands, okay, this checkbox is associated with this task, this checkbox is associated with this task. So what happens is, even though the user does not click on the checkbox and click on only on the task, the whole task will be strike through. Otherwise, if you don't associate these things together, the user, every time user wants to strike through a task, he has to click on the checkbox only. He cannot click on the task. If he click on the task, nothing will happen, because task is not being associated with any checkboxes. Here we have associated this task with the task which has this ID, with this particular label. Okay, so yeah, so that is why I did it. Now we want the strike through feature, so let's do that. Okay, so for that to happen, we'll say, we'll give it a class name, and we'll say, give it the class name based on item dot is done. So if is done is true, if is done is true, give it a class name strike. And if is done, okay, so this is a conditional operator, and if is done is false, give it a class name like nothing. There is no need to give it a class name in that scenario. So let's have our style.css here. So we'll have a class strike. So if is done is true, we'll have a class strike which will say text decoration, text decoration. Okay, there is no strike through, there is line through. There is line through, yes. Okay. So if is done is true, and when the is done will is true, when we click on here, the is done will change. So let's change the is done. So when we click on here, this thing will change, the checkbox will change, the status of checkbox will change. So let's have an on change. So when the user clicks on the checkbox, the on change will run because the checkbox is changing, the status of checkbox is changing. So we'll give it just status handler. So so it will simply run a function named status handler. It says status handler is not defined, no worries, let's define status handler. So we'll say const, I'll be using arrow functions here. Const status handler is equals to, I want a particular task to be strike through. No, which task I want to be stricken through? The task which has this particular ID, this particular ID. So for that to happen, let's pass on that ID. Let's pass on that ID to our function status handler. So we'll say item.id. Now the item, that ID is passed to the status handler. Now what we'll do is, here it will receive the ID. Now we will map through the whole list. We'll map through the whole list, and whenever the ID that we got here matches the ID, of any of the tasks, the task is done will be turned to true. Let me reiterate. What we'll do is we get the ID here, so we know, okay, so this is the task that the user clicked on. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll map through the whole list of tasks, this list variable, this list state variable, and whenever the ID matches, we'll change the status of is done. So accordingly, that task will either be stricken through, or if there is a line through that task, the line will be removed. Okay, so let's do that. So I'll say uh, I'll say, so for that, so that you guys could understand, const new list is equals to list dot map, and here I'll say item, and what I want to do is, so I'll say return, and I'll say, here again I'll use the conditional operator. I'll say if item.id is equals to ID, so this ID is the ID that we are getting from here. So if item.id is equals to ID, change the status of is done. We cannot say that do is done true. Why? Because what if this then is already true? So what do you mean when I say this then is already true? That what if the task has already been stricken through? We want that strike to be removed. So if is then is already true, we want it to be false. So in essence, whatever the Boolean value of is done is, we want to change that and make it opposite to that value. Okay. So let's do that. So yeah, in case ID matches, return this. Return what? Just, okay, not this. Okay, just return the item. And if you don't know how map works, you can see my video. It's an awesome video. So we'll just destructure the item and and okay, and we'll say is done is equals to item dot is done, but this time its value should be opposite. If it's true, make it false. If it's false, make it true. But if, what if the IDs doesn't match? Then we don't have to do anything. Just return the item as it is. Okay, so this is the new list. Now this is the new list. We have to make this new list equal to this list, because this is the updated list where the is done is updated for a particular task. So let's update our actual list that is actually being rendering on the screen. So to do that, we'll simply say this. That's it. This list variable will be equal to this new list now. Okay. So okay, so I cannot have it here. Sorry. So yeah, okay. Now I think things should work. Let's test things out. And you can see like code becoming messy here. So after having all the code in a single page, I'll make different components, so it will be very clear what I'm doing. Okay, so let's have another task. Okay, see, now if I'm striking through, the whole task is being striked through. And if I'm striking through by clicking on here on the return task itself, then also it works. Why it works? Because of this thing, no? Because of this label, this for in the label. Okay, and this ID here, these two things matches. Okay, so this is done. Now what I want is, okay, now let's have a button. What kind of button? A delete button, so that you could delete a particular task which you do not want to see, because it's a new day and old tasks are done with. You're done with the old tasks. So for that to happen, we'll have to have an icon. So for that, let's import React icons. If we could do it here. So I think this is it. Okay, so dependencies being is here. Now let me just have the delete. So just before I do this, let me just show you something. So you can have this in your, again, VS Code or whatever the editor you are using this, no? Using this command, and I want delete. This is delete. Okay. So I copied this and let's paste this. Okay, so let's import it. Import this icon from React icons, and we have to use the initial two words here. Okay, so whatever the icon is, we have to use the initial two words. So the icon is being imported. You can also import in your code like this. This React icons, this is a great resource, man. So this is a div. Okay, so for every task we want to have this delete icon. So no worries, let's have the delete icon. So let's add the task and see if we are getting delete icon here. So yes, we are getting delete icon here, but it's not working. And why the heck it should work? So let's make it working. So when I click on the delete icon, when the user clicks on the delete icon, I want tasks to be deleted. That particular task to be deleted. Okay. And how I'll do it, I'll just say like let's have a function so that we don't have to write everything here itself. We want this task to be deleted. Okay, so we are having, it says delete task is not defined. No problem, we'll have delete task here. Just status handler. So let's have fonts. Again, I'll be using arrow functions because I'm comfortable with them. If you are not, I recommend you to start using arrow functions. Although it's your personal choice, but yeah, I recommend you just use it. It will feel more natural once you start using it. So yeah, so in delete task, what we'll do is we want a new list, and this time instead of mapping, we'll filter out a particular task. Why? Because we don't want a task on which the user clicked. So we'll filter out that particular task, and the remaining task will get as it is. So let me just copy paste this thing now, because what is the what is the need of writing things again and again when we could have this? So yeah, now what we'll do is instead of map, we'll say filter. And we don't need return here, so I think. So we don't even need all this thing. All this we don't need here. So yeah, so filter if, so we also want ID here, no? Because see how important the ID is. So how important the UUID is, no? Because based on the ID, we are striking through a task. Based on the ID, we are deleting a task. And I'll show you error in console, although it doesn't show on our app, but still we'll remove that error using the ID only. Okay, so we want ID here also. So I don't need this. I'll simply pass the ID here. It's a callback, so let's make it one. I'll say what is it? It's item dot ID. So ID has been passed here. Now if so, no, we don't want this. We want this. If ID doesn't match, then the thing is true. I don't need these brackets also. Okay, so yeah, I have to use this here and here. Okay, so if ID doesn't match, the thing is true, and if the thing is true, what filter does is that task will remain as it is, and if ID matches, that task is false and hence will be removed from the new list, and then we are setting the new list here. So let's see if things are working fine. Okay, so let's see. Okay, yeah, they are working fine. Now let me just remove this also. Okay, so great, it's working now. Okay, now although you're not here to learn CSS, but still, let me give a little bit styling. Then I'll just make this app look look great, no? And we'll have a clear task also. But yeah, first, yeah, just let me do something. Okay, so first let's have some background color. What background color to have? So here I'll have a background color. Background color. Just a second. I just made an app. What was that? So I recently made this app, but you don't have to go into this. I am just copy pasting background color from here. That's it. Okay, so give it background color this, and min height 100 VH, and okay, just one thing to body, just a little bit of styling, just a little bit. Margin 0. Okay, so yeah, margin 0. Now okay, Let's add the task and see if they look good. Okay, I have to change the color, so let's change the color. Color white. Okay, task turned white, but they are not looking very good. This is a task. Okay, they are not looking very good, so let's style them a little bit. Okay, so we have striked, and let's have another class here. Not striked. Not striked. Okay, so we have striked here, and we'll have striked here, and we'll have not striked here. Dot. Where is dot? Dot not striked here, and I'll say here display flex, and justify content space between. Now it's looking not space between. Let's say space around. No, let's have space between here. Space between, like that's it. Okay, so yeah, let's have some padding, so we can do it here also. We could say simply, no, we could not. We can say simply margin bottom 1 rem, and to input also we could say, like you could style it on your own also, but yeah, just a little bit. Okay, and here I'll have just point 0.5 rem, or maybe 0.3 rem. Okay, then now I can just delete a task. I could strike through a task, even though I'll click on a task, it will be strike through. So yeah, that's done. Now let's segregate these things. No, let's make this app look beautiful. If you wanna leave, you can leave here. Okay, just one more thing, then you can leave if you want to leave. I also told you that we'll have a clear button, so let's have that also. So just have this also, simple button which will clear all tasks, so that user doesn't have to click on this delete icon each and every time to clear all tasks. Clear all tasks. Okay, so what it will do is, on click, it will just simply say, so I don't have to give it a function. Yeah, I could simply say, so you remember our tasks are here. We name our task in this list, and we have set list to modify that list. The set list, which is a state function, we'll say set list, and we'll just empty the list, whole list. So if I say clear all tasks, voila, the tasks are cleared. Okay, but there is some discrepancy here, because yeah, the clear all tasks obviously goes up. So I'll just give it a class name. And what will be the class name? Class name, let's say, okay, clear button. And I'll say here that clear button will have like a margin top of, let's say 5 mm. That's it. Why is it so? So I have this class name clear button on the on click. Okay. So let's have a break here also. Now it should work. Okay, so yeah. So task will be added and the margin will, the 5 prime will always be maintained here. Okay. So now let's do a little bit cleaning so it will look good. Okay. So if you wanna leave, you can leave now, but I'll recommend don't leave. Watch this video till the very end, because although this is a very small app, you should keep your code very clear and consistent. Like not clear, readable, so that when a new developer comes in, he can understand very quickly what is happening here. And forget new developer, man. Even if you can, you will see, like, even if I see my code after 2 or 3 months, no, I used to forget, why the heck I wrote like this, or why the heck I did this or this or this. So yeah, I recommend you to make your code look good. It's a very good practice. And in React you have components, no, so why not? So it will take like 2-3 minutes, so just bear with me. So we have this components folder. Inside this components folder, uh so why is it like this? Is there some issue with code sandbox? I don't know. Let me just delete this thing. Yeah, delete. Okay, now let me make the folder again. Components folder, and in this folder, okay, so yeah, I am not able to create the components folder. So let's simply create the two. What I'm thinking is, I'll segregate this code into two components. One component will be the input component. The second component will be the, let's name it the tasks component. Okay. Yeah. So the input component.js, the input component will contain what it will contain: the input field and the add button. That's it. And the task component will contain all the tasks and this clear all tasks button. Okay. So first let's make this input.js. So we'll say export function input, and we'll simply return. What will return? We'll just copy paste from here. Why? Because why not? So yeah, we'll copy paste the input and this button. So that are the two things that we want here. But we have to wrap these things inside something, some div or something like this. So yeah, now it says it doesn't recognize UUID and set input, set list. No worries. So for that we have to we'll just copy paste useState from here. Okay, so useState is being recognized. Now we'll copy this UUID from here. So okay, so this is being recognized. Now okay, so UUID is not even needed here, no. So yeah, let's remove it from here. So we could just also cut paste this input and set input. Now I think it's working. Okay, so it doesn't recognize set list. So because you can see, we also need this set list. We'll also need this set list in this function. For this function, delete task and this status handler, which will be there in the another component task.js. So since we need this thing, list and set list in both the components, let's just keep it here in this app.js and pass it as props. So let's pass it as props. So let's have the input field here, and don't worry, I'll go through it at the very end, like everything, no. So yeah, so we'll have what we want here. So we want set list here, set list and list here. So actually I think list we don't need. Okay, so I'll simply say set list here. I will say set list, just pass it as prop, and here receive this prop. Set list is received. Now one thing more, I have not imported input. So let's import input from dot slash input. Now what's the issue? It says, okay, issue with some div. Okay, no problem. So we have input here. We have this div here. We want this. Mm, 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 mm. No problem. Now we'll just take this down, this list, and this button, and this button. But why there is issue here? I don't understand. Okay, so it says set list. Okay, so we have just a sec, man. क्या हुआ? अभी रुक जाओ, मैं वीडियो बना रहा हूँ यार, थोड़ी देर रुक जाओ, थोड़ी देर बैठ जाओ फिर नजर, थोड़ी देर बैठो। 12 बज गए। हम्म। So yeah, where I was, okay. So why this error, यार? Okay, so I didn't close this. That is why this error was coming. You can see we are having input here. Now let's make this another file which says tasks.js, and here let's just do the same thing. We'll do export tasks. Okay, so export function tasks, and we'll simply return, and again we have to enclose it. So either use div or like use this thing, I don't remember what these things are called, and do this, and we again need this thing here. Okay, so let's just cut paste from here. So so as will also need these functions here, because these functions are called here. No, you can see delete task and status handler, these are being called here only. So yeah, let's have it here. Now you can see this is clean, although we want to import tasks also. So we'll say import tasks from dot slash tasks, and we'll simply say, so you can see the our UI, like our code is very clean. We know, okay, so this is task and this is input, and here we want both of these list and set list as prop. Okay, so yeah, we have to enclose it. I was facing this problem before also. So what it's saying, check the render method of app. So no problem, let's first do this. We have set list and list being imported, like being passed as props. So let's receive them here. List and set list we have received. Error gone. One error, we don't know what this is. This icon is, so let's have this icon also. So let's have this icon here at top. Okay, so this is, so you can see. Okay, first just remove this error, so then we'll think what will this. One thing, it says list. Okay, it doesn't know what list is because we have not passed list here. Actually, we don't need to. So let me show you something. What we'll do is we can say prev, and we could so whatever the previous state values, just take it and just destructure it. And for that matter, we could have like any name here. Let me just name it any, and we could simply destructure it here. And then after destructuring the list items, we can add another list item like this. Simple, as simple as that. But for the sake of understandings, I'll do prev, which represents the previous values of the previous items in the list. Okay, so hence we do not require the list here. We only need the set list prop. Now what is this? Check the render method of app. Why? We have div, and we are returning things. Okay, let me just clear the console for once and expected a string but got undefined. But export your component. Okay, you likely forgot to export your component. So have I not exported this? Export, yes, I have. Have I not exported this? Okay, not this. Export, I exported this, and here I imported input as well as tasks. So let me just see, this is tasks now, and here also. Okay, so the T small, one sec, T big. Now okay, so there is no problem, things are working fine. You can see in console there is this error. Okay, so one more thing, when we are using actually these errors, like your app will work fine, but if you want to remove these errors, no, do things that React suggests, so you won't have any issues in the future. So instead of for, we'll use HTML for here, because for we use in JavaScript, not in React. In React we use the HTML for, as it is suggesting. Where is it? Okay, this is here. So yeah, so it's saying no invalid DOM property for. Did you mean HTML for? So React is so smart, man. So yeah, so yes, I meant HTML for. And what other error it is showing? Is it showing any other error? It will show some error, I think. Yeah, each analyst should have a unique key prop. This I told you, whenever you are having map, you should have a unique key prop. So we are mapping things here in the list, so we'll want to have a unique key prop. So here in this div, because we are mapping this div over and over again, we are rendering this div again and again. So we want to have a key prop here. So let's have a key, and our key should be different every time. So let's make it the ID. So now we won't have any issues. Okay. Okay, so let me just, okay, so now we don't have any issues in console also. See, we are cutting. Now I can also open this actually in a new tab. Just copy this and let me just close this and this and this, and I'll give you this link to this code and this application in the description. So you can check that out. So you see, we are having this here, and this is a task, and you could style it out however you want. Just stretch this input field, give some margin padding, and make it look awesome, because CSS I assume that you could do. But see, this looks so cool, so simple, so understandable, no? So a new person could understand, okay, this is input and this contains tasks. Now let me just go through the app very quickly once, okay, and then we'll end the session. So this is the input field. As I told you, it contains the two things, this input field and this add button. So let me just show you the input field. This is the input field. It contains this input where the user is inputting the task, and this button, this add button. Okay, so this input is simply, we are having a state here. This input is simply capturing whatever we are inputting here. The user is inputting here, set input is simply capturing that and putting that value in this state variable input by using e.target.value. Now on clicking this add button, what is happening? This is very important, so let's understand. So on clicking this add button, what is happening is we are changing value of set list. What is the set list? So let me just show you here what is this list. This list, in which initially is empty, contains all our tasks, all our to-dos. Okay, and setlist is a state function which we are using to modify the list. We want to strike through a task, or we want to delete a task, we want to add a task. All those functionalities we could do with list by using this set list, which is a state function. Okay, so yeah, so list contains this list, no? So when we are clicking, so here when we clicking on this add button, we actually want to add a task in the list. So for that to happen, what we did is we passed this prop set list from here app.js, and then on clicking, what we did is whatever the previous value of set list, it is whatever the previous value of list, that is whatever the previous tasks were there in the list, just give me that. And then when we got that, we are destructuring that and we are adding the new task. And each new task contains three things, because each new task is an object which contains three keys. One is an ID, second is a to do, that is the task itself, and third one is the is done, which is actually the status, whether the task is done or not. For example, here the task is not done. If I click on here, the task is done and it's being striked out. Okay, and after the task is like, after we click on this add button, the input should again be set to empty. So here we are doing value input, so that and here we are setting the input to this empty string, so that the task doesn't remain here and user doesn't have to manually clear this out. See, this is being automatically cleared out after being added here. So this is, by doing this, we are adding the task to the list, and by doing this, we are clearing the input from here. So this is, so I hope you understand this input component which contains the input field and this add button. Now let's understand this tasks component. It is also very easy. Here we are passing two props. One is set list, another one is a list. Again, set list, let me just reiterate, because set list helps us to manage the list of to-dos. We can either delete it, edit it, or add any task. Okay, so you saw the functionality to add. Now we'll see the functionality to strike through a task, delete a particular task, or clear all tasks at once. Now we don't, like, this first element is done. Now as far as this task is concerned, what we have to do is we'll simply just map over the list. This is the first thing we'll do. And first, when we map over the list, what we want, first we want an input, which is a checkbox here, as you can see, which is a checkbox here. And second is the label associated with that particular input that I told you previously, how they are being associated using this HTML for and this ID here. Okay, and this is done represents whether the task is done or not. So here what we are saying is check the task only if it is done. Okay, and if it's not done, its value is false, is done is false, so don't check the task. Okay, and we are having this on change here. On change is basically helping us to manage this checkbox whether it is ticked or not. So what we are doing here, when the user clicks on this checkbox, this on change comes into picture. It passes the item.id id of that particular task to status handler, and what status handler does is it's very easy. Okay, what status handler does is it, see here, see this thing only, it first maps over the all the elements, and when the id matches, it maps over the whole list of tasks, and when the id matches with this id that we are getting here, then change the status of is done. If it's false, make it true. If it's true, make it false. Okay, if the id doesn't matches, return the item as it is. No, so because if is done is false, we want to make it true so that we could just strike through. If it's already stricken through, we want this strike to be removed, so we want to make it false. So yeah, whatever its status is, just change the status. So by doing this, we are generating a new list because we are making some changes in the previous list. So in order to set this new list equal to our actual list, we'll just use this setList function and have this new list inside this setList function, so that our list is equal to this new list now. So this new list, so that our list is like knows the whether a task is done or not. No, the updated value of is done for a few tasks on which the user has clicked. Okay, so this is done. Now this label, you know that this is attached with this thing. Now what happens here when we click here? So when we click here, the task is deleted. No, so what happens is the delete task is being executed when a person clicks on this delete icon. So we are passing again the id of the task on which the user has clicked, and what this delete task does is simply filters out that particular task that is being deleted based on the id. That's it. And we are again getting the new list. The list is being updated. So yeah, and one more thing, what this does is this class, and this is very important. No, if this item dot is done is true, which we are changing by using the status handler. We are managing this item dot is done using this status handler function. If this item dot is done is true, then make the task strike, else make the task not strike. And what is there in strike? Text decoration line through. Hence the task has been stricken, will be stricken, and not strike, actually there is not strike. So yeah, this strike and not strike, these are just to give some styling. No, so yeah. And here we have this clear all tasks. To clear the task, in order to clear the task, we'll again using the set list and simply setting all the list to equal to the empty array, so that all the tasks have been removed. So I think you understand input and tasks, and yeah, that's all for this video. If you like this video and gained any value from this video, I'll really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel. And since this channel is new, if you could give a thumbs up or just comment below like what you understood, or if you want to ask some question or something like that, just go ahead and do that, because since it's a new channel, it helps me with YouTube algorithm. Okay, so yeah, that will be helpful. So that's all folks, we'll meet next time with another video, but I have to pause this video before that. So yeah, bye.